Following a recent discussion at a horror conference talking about the weight of what might be deemed to be master texts and the importance we bestow on an original article, Scream 2 almost seems like an own goal at the point of conception. Scream was such a force of nature and changed the game, as well as becoming a well-regarded crowd pleaser. The notion of doing Scream again is almost contrary to what Scream was about. Scream examined the formulas and conventions and cliches that slasher movies followed, and crafted a film where characters who thought they were above the cliches ended up playing out the cliches, where cliches were turned on their head to subvert audience expectation, and left us with a world where realistically the same couldn't be done again, because it made an audience much more aware. By the time Scream 2 arrives, not only is an audience well armed regarding the conventions of slasher movies, but they also come to this with the knowledge of what the Scream experience is as its own thing. So Scream 2 has an incredibly arduous task to live up to its predecessor, deliver what fans expect, but also try to keep it surprising and relevant. Scream 2 crafts a multi-layered and exciting opening, but also maintains a sense of playfulness. Its sharp satirical and cynical edge is on display immediately, as the film begins at a sneak preview of Stab, the film within a film, based on the original Scream murders. Gale Weathers, the fame-seeking bitch of the first film, has written a cheap cash-in book, resulting in a cheap cash-in movie. The conception of how the movie Stab is being sold and promoted almost feels like a return to the Roger Corman or William Castle days. Corman actually cameos in 3 as a producer of the Stab movies. There is conceivably very little angle that generated the kind of interest in this movie that we see, except to make it an event, where an audience is either aware that it's based on the true story and doesn't care, or is ignorant of the fact and follows it because Gale Weathers has a name now. The card filmed in Stabovision calls to mind the idea of something like 13 Ghosts using 3D glasses to be able to see the ghosts, as well as giving away Ghostface costumes at the preview, attempting to give birth to something iconic that can keep being marketed. As a magnification of the scene in the first Scream, where we see a group of teenagers watching and commenting upon Halloween, here we see a theatre crowd in full swing, amping themselves up for a bloodbath. Through a weird distorted lens we see the opening of Scream again, except in a knockoff, almost fan reenactment way. We go through the same motions without any of the playfulness, the sense of composition, or the graceful way in which Scream unfolds the horror. Rather, we are treated to the ideas of gratuitous nudity and formula setups, even throwing in a thunderstorm for extra chills. The Scream of the in-Scream universe does not seek to be the same kind of game-changer that Scream was. This sloppy rerun of the brutal opening of the first Scream, with its in-universe real-world connection, distorts the membrane between reality and fiction. While the Stab audience begins baying for the blood of the fake Casey, the audience of Scream 2 is also anticipating their own gory opening. Phil is soon killed in the cinema bathroom, and as the fake Casey is being brutally killed on screen, Maureen is repeatedly stabbed by a ghost face wearing Phil's jacket. As she tries to escape, shots show the crowd of ghost faces in a frenzy, screaming for her to die, believing it to be a publicity stunt. This not only feeds into a tragic sense of enemies being everywhere, that the real Ghostface could be any one of these people, but there is now no help for her new victim. As she clambers up on stage to die, and her scream shatters the reverie, we get wide shots of the audience, and here we, the audience of Scream 2, are invited just for a moment to look in on ourselves enjoying the mayhem. There is no distinct separation made here between us and the movie audience. Just for a moment, it asks the question, why do we come here for this? Crucially, however, Scream 2 does not make any judgment, nor does it unravel this thread, merely holds up a mirror, just for a quick glance at the oddness of it, before a smash cut brings us to the title card and the return to our favourite characters. Scream 2's very existence is brought into question only a few minutes later, during a scene in film class, which leads to a discussion about the questionable nature of sequelization. Though Mickey offers that many sequels have surpassed the original, which ignites a spurious debate on those that exceed or stand up to the master text, objectively and generally, sequels tend to be less artistically driven or pure, birthed more by the notion of a guaranteed hit and a cash grab. They are largely seen as more studio-driven than driven by any kind of legitimate creative spark, and yet here we are watching a sequel to a surprise hit. The filmmakers know that the audience will already be asking these questions about the legitimacy of Scream 2, and so brings it front and center. It's down to interpretation whether it's a suggestion that Scream 2 will surpass expectations and the original film, because it goes in with an inherent knowledge that sequels don't usually surpass the original, or whether it's stating outright that there's little chance of it surpassing the original, that returns are typically diminished, and the audience is here anyway, so you might as well enjoy yourselves. So, in an effort to be Scream, it doubles down on the Scream experience, in ways such as throwing in multiple red herrings to keep the audience guessing about the killer's identity, to the extent of having both the eventual killers deliberately flagging up red herrings to the surrounding characters, to keep them and the audience off track. Identified as a copycat case of the original murders, Scream 2 cannily addresses the idea of a hit movie, particularly slashers, giving way to a score of inferior imitators that copy the furniture of the movie, the basic setup, without any real understanding of what made that particular movie special. Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student, reveals that he will blame the movies for his actions, explicitly setting himself against Billy Loomis in the first Scream, who decried the notion.
He's sick fucks. You've seen one too many movies.
Nah, Sid! Don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
Rattling off names of high-profile lawyers that helped acquit O.J. Simpson in his murder case, this denouement shows a court of public opinion wide open to negative influences, and highlights the off-balance nature of the American legal system. This notion of blame comes back around when the second killer, Mrs. Loomis, takes the stage. She seeks to vilify herself by suggesting this all started with Sidney's mother, whose affair with Billy's father caused the split that led her to abandon Billy and seek revenge for his death. Scream 2 has a nearly impossible act to follow given the gauntlet laid down by its predecessor. Yet as well as continuing to deliver on the baselines laid down by the first film, with the strong focus on surviving characters, meta-humor, and requisite shocks and suspense, Scream 2 deepens its exploration of the cycles of horror and real-world violence. With the release of Stab and a copycat killer as its starting point, Scream 2 shows a complete lack of ethical awareness on the part of both Gale and Stab's creators about turning tragedy into entertainment. Inadvertently kicking off a new cycle of bloodshed by immortalizing Scream's killers on film and making the sequel's killers more creative, Scream 2 examines an Ouroboros of horror creation and consumption, a cycle of exploitation, imitation, and violence that continually feeds itself.